Welcome to the Hyperspace Conduit Cast, brought to you by the Department of Multidimensional Travel, with your hosts Josie Kins and Emily Kins, and produced by the Transcendent Hypnagogist. Today on the cast, we will be discussing Psychedelic Epiphanies.
So we did a tier list video about a year ago that covered specific transpersonal and mystical subjective effects. And one of those transpersonal or mystical specific subjective effects is known as a noetic insight or a noetic epiphany, in which you go through the experience of having an insight kind of just occurring in your brain that feels as if it's intuitively true. And these insights or epiphanies can be incredibly complex, and they are usually of a transpersonal or philosophical or metaphysical or spiritual nature. I have personally been through, I think it's over 10 different specific noetic insights that keep occurring throughout my psychedelic career or history. And today we are going to go through every single one of them. Emily here has helped me translate them or solidify them into more concrete ideas. And then we are going to critically analyze them and rank them in a fun mimetic tier list based on my own personal biases.
What are the main differences between a noetic epiphany or psychedelic epiphany and a just normal insight that can arise from clarity or analysis enhancement is that you don't arrive at these mystical insights through analysis and piecing it together. Instead, it just all occurs to you at once.
Yeah, it feels like it's telepathically beamed into your third eye directly from God. Let's go into the first epiphany.
The illusory nature of the separate self. Instead of humans being separate agents approaching an outside world, we are the entire universe experiencing itself, exploring itself, and interacting with itself through particular mind-body systems that a given being's consciousness happens to reside in.
Throughout my psychedelic career, unity and interconnectedness, as it's classified with in the Subjective Effect Index, has always been the most significant and meaningful subjective effect to me, and I have been through it perhaps 4 different times, each of which are documented within trip reports, and all of those 4 experiences were by far the most profound and kind of life-changing experiences I have ever been through. I first heard of this effect through Alan Watts' lectures, and I noticed that all of my friends were taking psychedelics and undergoing these experiences in which they realized that the universe was one unified system of behavior, and that the nature of the separate self, as they had previously seen them, was in fact an illusory construct of the human mind. And I found this idea absolutely fascinating and captivating, and I wrote so much about it and I researched so much about it, and I found that this idea of non-dualism is embedded within so many different belief systems throughout history and culture. So I tried so hard to pursue this effect, and it would just never happen, but it was happening to all of my friends around me. Eventually, when I stopped pursuing the effect, it kind of just happened under the influence of ayahuasca. At the time, it felt like it completely changed my life. And at this point, I do believe that non-dualism, or the idea that the ego as a separate agent approaching an external environment which it is not directly connected to, is illusory. And I think that is philosophically and rationally justifiable.
I remember when we were working on the Unity article and video script together, that one of the things that you really wanted to get across in that script is that the experience of unity can feel like remembering or realizing that you are not separate from the universe.
Yeah, it feels like the universe has tricked itself into thinking it is separate from itself, and it's like undergoing an epiphany or a realization. It's re-remembering, oh, I am the entire universe, and I am exploring myself through the particular mind-body system that this particular point of awareness happens to reside in. One of the issues that I've had with this subjective effect is I have understood this to be true for over a decade now. It always felt like it was a life-changing realization, but when I think about it, I'm not entirely sure what it has actually changed about my life. In theory, the idea that we are all one and we are all the same system should make me more empathetic with my fellow man, but when I really think about it, it feels to me that this particular part of myself, as in the entire universe, is inevitably going to prioritize itself over other parts of itself, i.e. other people or other things in the universe, and it hasn't really changed my behavior or my outlook in any way. This does seem to be a pretty consistent realization that most people go through inevitably under the influence of psychedelics, and I think that it's pretty easy to demonstrate through the sheer frequency that this idea pops up within human culture, media, and spiritual practices. So because it's so, I guess, overplayed and it hasn't actually impacted my life or behavior that much, I'm going to rank it as D tier.
D tier. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I am way more judgmental of myself than I am of anyone else.
Yeah, because I'm me.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone else is.
Well, yeah. But if you're taking everything else as part of yourself, then maybe that gives you license to be even more judgmental about it, like you are about yourself. You know, like I am the universe and I wish I was better than I am, and I have these bad parts that I don't like.
And this is one of the bad parts.
Oh no. Yeah. Also that.
Okay, so D tier.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you been to hyperspace? Did you wish that you could bring something back, or at least get a souvenir you can show your friends? Using cutting-edge computer graphics technology, our artists at the Department of Multidimensional Travel have captured the awe-inspiring wonder of a breakthrough experience in 3 lovingly rendered spatial dimensions. Then, using hyperspace age imaging techniques, we compressed a higher dimensional snapshot of the mystical experience into a physical piece of wearable or hangable art for your home or your person. Our t-shirts are high quality, locally screen printed with water-based inks, 100% cotton, and available in 2 different colorways. Our poster is screen printed on holographic paper, reflecting the constantly shifting shades of your inner universe. Commemorate your travels, support the work of artists in your dimension, and help fund future interdimensional transmissions. Visit www.multidimensional.market to order your t-shirt or holographic poster today.
Next one, we have interdependent opposites, catalyzed existence. The universe is governed by a system of interdependent opposites, wherein the existence of a system or process is impossible without the presence of its presupposed counterpart. This foundational framework catalyzed the emergence of the universe itself, as the concept of nothing could not logically function without presupposing the concept of something into existence.
I first underwent this epiphany and experience in conjunction with Unity, and it's something that's popped up quite a lot for me. It's categorized within the Subjective Effect Index on effectindex.com as perception of interdependent opposites, and it's not something that's specific to me. It does seem to occur quite a lot with other people during mystical and transpersonal experiences.
Yeah, it was actually on the mystical experience tier list.
Yeah, but I think it went further with me in particular because it was extrapolated into a sort of universe creation myth in which, for unknown reasons, there is a system in place in which opposites presuppose one another. And at the start of the universe, this began with nothing, which presupposed something out of sheer logical necessity. And from something, other opposites began to arise. Matter and antimatter, up and down, past, future, things like that. As that led into the creation of matter and more complex life systems, sentience began to spawn different opposites. You know, love versus hate, life versus death, decay versus growth, progress versus... What's the opposite of progress? I was going to say degeneracy, but I don't think that's quite right. I feel that this is true, that this is why the universe exists. To me, I know that this is true. When I logically analyze this belief system, even though I feel it to be true, because the psychedelics insist that it's true, and I cannot unfeel its intuitive truth, I do notice, though, that human beings kind of break everything out into opposites as a part of their innate thought structure and the way that language works. So I wonder if perhaps this is just my sort of neurological primitive human thought system being applied to how the universe functions. And that to me kind of gives me a nagging doubt of its legitimacy. Interestingly, the Taoist creation myth is very similar to this. You have the Tao, which is the way, and from the Tao spawns the the yin and the yang. And then from that spawns three things. So you have three things in relation to them. From that spawns the elements, and then from that spawns the 10,000 things. It's very analogous. But again, I think that creation myth might be arising from how humans logically intuit the world around them through language. So because of that, I am going to rank this as C-.
I think that humans have a tendency to overestimate the existence of things having opposites.
Yeah.
For example, people might think that sweet and bitter are opposites, but they're not.
Right. Yeah, and in reality, things exist on a spectrum.
Yeah, but when it comes to, for example, sweet and bitter, those are just very different things. And you just sense both of them. Tasting a lot of sweet could counteract your experience of bitter a little bit, but you are experiencing both of them. The opposite of sweet is not sweet. The opposite of bitter is not bitter.
Right.
Pantheism. If the definition of God is the all-knowing, all-powerful creator and sustainer of existence, then the universe itself perfectly fits this criteria. Therefore, all of existence can be defined as God, including me, you, and everything else.
This is an extremely common noetic insight or noetic epiphany that occurs when people are undergoing unity. It's almost, at least from my personal experience, it feels as if the definition of godhood and existence are somehow merging. It's sort of a logical extrapolation of, if I am everything and I created everything because I am everything and I contain all knowledge and I am all powerful because I am the universe, therefore I am identical to that of God, and everything around me is identical to that of God. So it's not specifically me. The people around me are God. The objects around me are God. Everything is God. For my personal definition of God, which would be an all-knowing, all-powerful creator and sustainer of existence, regardless of some sort of anthropomorphization, turning it into kind of more like a human figure, like Santa Claus or Jesus or whatever, I feel that that is, to me, an acceptable definition of God. So I feel that I am God, and so is everything else. But if a person's definition of God semantically requires that it be sentient or human-like, then those definitions probably aren't going to merge. It kind of brings the whole idea of pantheism back down to a matter of semantics. So I think you can logically argue that we are all God, but if you have a definition of God that doesn't match up with that of the universe, then you're kind of just going to have to agree to disagree. Because of that, and since this idea is so common, it's not particularly original, I'm probably just going to rank this as E tier.
Yeah, I feel like one of the issues with this one is that, as much as it's one of those ideas that should be somewhat humbling, the idea that everything and everyone is God, and in that sense, you as an individual are not special, it is often the kind of thing that people will take as like, oh, I am enlightened.
Yeah.
I know that everyone's God and these guys don't.
That does happen a lot.
Yeah. So it's kind of paradoxically ego-inflating.
Ego death will be that in general. Because people will be like, my ego is smaller than your ego.
Yeah. I am enlightened.
Yeah, my ego is tiny.
Yeah. Not everyone has such a small ego, you know, like as I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, mine's smaller, so.
Well. Eternalism and immortality. The commonly held conception of time wherein only one moment can exist at a time is an illusion. All moments, past, present, and future, exist. It's just that we only experience one at a time and only in a given order. In this way, no one and nothing that has ever existed is ever truly gone.
Within the subjective effect index on effectindex.com, this subjective effect is categorized as perception of eternalism, which is a philosophical idea that is kind of against presentism. So there's this general understanding with human beings that the past no longer exists, the future is yet to happen, and the present is the only thing that is real.
I guess that idea, one of the things that does is makes people feel like in order for their existence to have meaning or to count, that it has to be remembered in the future. And that can lead people's potentially unhealthy thirst for fame.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor. One thing I wanted to talk about is, while I do not understand it entirely, and I would never claim to, the modern theoretical physics understanding of time seems to suggest that the traditional human conception of time is in fact an illusion. All time frames exist simultaneously because time is the fourth dimension. It is a fourth direction. Things that exist in the past or the future, while your time frame isn't currently overlapping with them, it's not because they don't exist, it's because they are essentially in the equivalent of a different geographical location. While this is, to my understanding, the modern conception of how time functions in the universe, what happens to me when I take psychedelics is I experience a noetic epiphany that extrapolates that idea further into having sort of philosophical implications. So, okay, if all time frames exist simultaneously and eternally, that means that all moments in the past, all people, are existing forever. They are essentially immortal within their own time frame, and they will always exist within their own time frame, as will the people in the future, as will my life. In some sense, that is kind of freeing because it's a rationally grounded justification for something that is analogous to an afterlife or immortality. My life will always exist within that time frame, but on the other hand, a lot of my life has been quite terrible, and it kind of sucks to know that I'm still back there just suffering for an eternity. So, human beings don't want to die. It's part of our evolutionary instinct. We want to avoid death. So this could potentially just be a kind of metaphysical cope. I'm thinking that I exist forever, but I don't actually. So I'm quite aware that it might be one of that. But on the other hand, I do think that it is a really cool idea, and it is kind of more original, at least, than Unity or Pantheism. So I'm going to give this particular noetic epiphany a C+.
And to be clear, this is something that you did not know that other people were thinking about when the psychedelics first suggested it to you.
Oh yeah, I had this noetic epiphany to an extreme and intricate and detailed extent, and I started to Google, and I realized there are all these philosophical and scientific frameworks that say the exact same thing. For example, four-dimensionalism is the idea that an object's persistence through time is analogous to its extension through space. Eternalism is a philosophical idea that all existence in time is equally real. The static interpretation of time is the idea that the objective universe does not happen, it simply exists in its entirety, albeit perceived from within as a world of changes. And I think a big part of the illusion that the past doesn't exist and the future is yet to happen is because cause and effect is going in one direction. It's going, from our perspective, forward. Finally, B theory of time is the idea that the flow of time is only a subjective illusion of human consciousness, and that the past, present, and future are equally real, and that time is essentially tenseless. It's interesting that even Albert Einstein believed this particular worldview. He actually wrote a letter to, I think it was someone that was close to him, after a funeral had happened, and I don't remember the specific quote, we'll just throw it up on the screen, but in that letter, he insisted that the person will continue to exist in the past because time is an illusion based on his theory of relativity that I am too smooth-brained to understand.
Panpsychism. Consciousness is the ability to react to input, even to the atomic level. Therefore, all things that can react or interact with other things are on the consciousness spectrum. Therefore, consciousness is a fundamental, all-permeating aspect of reality.
I feel that this one is true, but I also kind of feel that it's slightly stupid and I don't even fully comprehend what the insight is. So it almost feels like a semantic merging, similar to that of my internally stored definition of the concept of godhood and my internally stored definition of existence or the universe, in that it feels to me that consciousness is essentially just awareness, or the ability to receive and respond to input. And when that is logically extrapolated, it feels that essentially everything exists on a spectrum of being aware and being able to respond to input. So an atom responds to things that interact with it. A rock, to a certain extent, will respond to things that interact with it. So they are on this spectrum. And this spectrum of consciousness goes, all the way up to bacteria, up to simple life, up to complex life, up to sentient minds and human beings, or perhaps like AI systems like ChatGPT. Through this method, a large language model would be on the consciousness spectrum, But it's not saying much because everything is on the consciousness spectrum, including an ant or a thermostat or anything else. I have a lot of doubts about this one, though. And so do you, if you want to go into that.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking like maybe a good example of something that interacts with things is maybe the weather.
Yeah.
One of the things that contributes significantly to wind is the fact that hot air rises and different temperatures will be occurring at different times and places. When air is heated, it will rise. And that, in combination with a lot of other things, results in wind happening. And so in that way, you could think of the air as being conscious because it's constantly interacting with this complex system of weather.
Yeah, it would be on the consciousness spectrum for sure, because it's receiving complex input and it's responding to that input. I think that sentience is probably different to consciousness, because sentience, at least in my internal definition of what the psychedelics have told me, is the ability to realize and think about the fact that you are aware, kind of metacognition. So once you've achieved that point, you're sentient, but you can be conscious all the way down to bacteria.
It doesn't even have to be bacteria. Like,
even
that's
lower,
still alive.
even lower than that. Yeah,
like things that are not alive.
I was thinking of the simplest life example, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if we're thinking about things that are not alive, I guess like thinking about it now, I think what that really gives us is trying to put the world into a bigger context. Because if you take it on a big enough context, for example, rocks, even though within our lifetimes they are inert in many cases, over the course of millennia, they undergo really significant changes. Everything is part of that system that does, over a very, very long time frame, change and progress.
But do you think it's true? Pantheism?
I don't see any reason to think of that as awareness, but I can see how thinking of it that way can help people put the world into a bigger context.
Right.
That's where I am on it, I think.
Yeah. I don't care whether or not it helps people. I'm just worried about whether or not it's actually true.
Well, I just don't see any reason for that to be thought of as awareness.
Yeah, I don't personally comprehend this insight, and I don't confidently feel that it is even true as, say, a solution to the hard problem of consciousness or something like that. So I'm probably going to rank this as an F tier insight. F+. I'll give it F+.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to think of it as consciousness personally, but I guess I'm not mad at somebody else does.
Thinking of awareness as consciousness?
Well, thinking of rocks as aware or conscious. Obviously things that exist will be acted on and potentially act on other things, because that's just what existence is. I don't see a reason to further define it as awareness or consciousness.
Yeah. And pantheism is a relatively well-defined philosophical belief or idea, and the whole awareness equals consciousness and awareness is responding to input thing seems to be an extrapolation that my mind has personally come up with. So perhaps pantheism is more philosophically justifiable than what I can do personally.
Or it's panpsychism.
Oh, yeah.
Panpsychism.
Panpsychism.
Yes. Human thought is a simulation framework. All of human experience, sensory processing, thought, imagination, hallucinations, dreams, etc., is the result of a unified neurological simulation framework that is very much analogous to a computer or virtual reality system.
So this is one that I genuinely believe is true, and something that has occurred to me or been clear to me time and time again as I have been a conscious being existing through this meat computer that we call a brain. It feels to me that consciousness, human thought, dreams, hallucinations, imagination, daydreaming are all part of a unified simulation framework in which our sensory organs take in data, which is then stored in a database and separated into concepts and subconcepts. And when we think about something, we retrieve a concept from our memory database and we render it within a simulation framework, much like on a computer. And when we render it, we can render it in varying degrees of detail. So if you're just thinking about something casually, you'll probably render it in quite a low degree of detail. If you are, say, having a vivid daydream, it might be a little higher. If you are straight up hallucinating or dreaming, you'll be simulating this concept in a level of detail that is potentially seamlessly analogous to that of real life. It looks completely realistic, and it can go as far as simulating other conscious agents through, say, entities or tulpas or dream characters. And furthermore, when you are being creative, when you are coming up with new ideas, you are retrieving different concepts from your memory database and you are mixing and matching them in new and interesting ways to create something entirely novel.
Yeah, one thing with all of that is, like, you are a very visual person.
Mm-hmm.
And so you tend to think about things or talk about things through the lens of visualization.
Yes.
I'm not as much of a visualizer, but I can still, like, recognize or experience having, honestly, I have some simulations of things that are more like a not super visually distinct, but at the same time very detailed 3D rendering of it, where I'm aware of all parts of it as opposed to seeing it from a viewpoint.
Yeah, I would say that's the same. And the simulation framework would handle all kind of sensory modalities, probably varying depending on the person. For you, the simulation framework will be rendering audio, probably, and feelings a lot more than vision, because my brain seems to be particularly visual. Yeah,
but also just concepts. Like, I can get into concepts and analysis in an entirely different processing power.
Yeah. So in terms of ranking this particular subjective effect, I truly do believe that the brain is a walking electrochemical computer, a very powerful one at that. And I do believe that imagination and thought and thinking and creativity are the result of a neurological simulation framework, very much analogous to that of a computer. So since I haven't heard too many other people talk about this idea, it gives it some amount of originality. It's not completely overplayed. I'm going to rank this idea at C+.
I very much believe it. We don't see things directly. We have eyes that receive some input, and then that goes to a visual cortex that processes it. And, like, what we get in terms of our actual impression of what things look like can be different than what our eyes literally see. Like, our brain does a lot of additional rendering to give us what we hope is a more detailed or better picture of the world. We have blind spots in our eyes that our brains fill in. All of our sensory input is being filtered through our brains in ways that we cannot fully understand. I fully believe this.
Yeah, honestly, that's a good point, because I think about it in terms of imagining something or dreaming something or hallucinating something. But in reality, I am currently simulating my external environment through my senses. So it's always happening.
Yeah, it's everything. Everything that we experience, all of our impressions of the world and ourselves and each other, it's all being simulated in our brains.
Imagination, hallucination, and simulation, in my mind, are synonyms.
The more that I learn about the brain, the more I am very, very dedicated or very confident about this idea. Yeah, so for me, this is kind of S tier for me personally. Hard determinism. All of our actions and decisions are the direct result of preceding factors such as our genetic composition, upbringing, environment, and general position within a complex chain of cause and effect, leading all the way back to the creation of the universe. We experience an illusion of free will, but do not truly possess free will relative to the rest of existence.
This one's relatively straightforward for me and is something that I believed well before I started experiencing high-level psychedelic states. The idea that free will is an illusory construct of the human mind and that we cannot decide otherwise because we are simply walking electrochemical machines responding to sensory input with pre-programmed responses based on a chain of cause and effect that is completely outside of our control, going all the way back to the creation of the universe. I think that this idea is completely philosophically justifiable and rationally justifiable, and people that believe in free will are kind of coping. It's a cope. I mean, I've had the debate so many times, but personally, I think that free will is an illusion. And furthermore, I don't actually experience the illusion of free will. I've talked about it on this channel before, but since about the age of 14, I have been experiencing chronic depersonalization. So I have no sense of self or agency. And I remember what it's like to have a sense of self and agency because I had a 3-year period between the age of 17 and 20 in which I did feel free will. And it's like, wow, I am a separate agent approaching an external environment, and I can use my limbs to manipulate the world around me, and it feels like I am doing it. I can move my hand in front of my face, and it feels like I am doing it. But now, since I'm depersonalized, I feel like I am on autopilot all the time. There are words coming out of my mouth, but it doesn't feel like I am doing it. I literally identify as an NPC. When I say that, there's always someone who's like, haha, so you admit it. I knew you were an NPC. You didn't believe D&T entities are real, so you must be an NPC. Glad you're finally confessing, but what? Whatever. I don't have a sense of free will or agency. I am just a machine responding to sensory input with pre-programmed responses, and you can believe and feel that you are otherwise, but you're not. This idea isn't particularly original. It's a pretty common debate to have. I'm probably just going to rank this effect D tier, because it's not that exciting.
So you're an NPC and I'm a delusional NPC, basically.
I'm an NPC that feels like an NPC, whereas you're an NPC that feels like a playable character.
So I'm a delusional NPC.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with this, though I do certainly feel the illusion of free will. I do wonder if this might have something to do with how you make decisions much more fluidly than me. Like I think about things a lot and consider different possibilities and different factors that could influence things.
Mm-hmm. I'm quite impulsive.
Yeah. Well, you'd rather just flow through things.
Yeah.
Just use your NPC responses.
Yeah, but even if I sit here and try to make a decision, I cannot feel that it's me doing it. No matter how hard I try, no matter how hard I move my hand in front of my face, I cannot feel that it is me doing it. It is just happening. I'm an automaton. Our
interactions are very complex. Your programming is quite intense.
Yeah, well, you know, the human brain is the most complex system in the known universe, so whatever.
Yeah. Sentient minds create meaning. Meaning, in the sense of significance, doesn't exist outside of sentient minds. Sentient minds create meanings, absorb meanings that others created, and project meanings to others. It may feel like the meanings we have created and shared were discovered in the world instead of created, or conversely, that meaning doesn't really exist at all, but both of these ideas are wrong. Meanings exist, and we create and perpetuate them. This one was a fun one to figure out how to write down in a relatively succinct way.
This is an epiphany that I have had many times on Psychedelics, and I feel like it's true. I don't know whether it is actually true, but essentially the idea is that meaning does exist as a physical property of the universe, but it's not down there within the laws of physics. It is an extension of the minds of sentient beings. I create meaning and value, and I apply it to things in the world around me, and that is real. It's just as real as a file that is stored on a hard drive. While a lot of people want meaning to be an inherent property of the universe, even without sentient minds, that's not the case. And then there are other people who think that since meaning only arises when human beings create it, that therefore it's not real or it's not legitimate. I think that sentient minds create meaning. This idea is very much in line with existentialism, where they say existence precedes essence. A thing exists, and then the essence of the thing is created after the fact. So the idea is that you have to create your own meaning in life. And I have personally done that, and I would encourage others to do the same. So in terms of ranking this idea, I give it a D+.
I like this one. I have gone through very different cultures in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have experienced some very radically different ones. I still have effects of different ones that I've experienced, especially growing up.
I think when something is meaningful to people collectively, it becomes more meaningful as we are all kind of projecting that meaning into the universe.
Well, then we kind of pressure each other to have the same meaning of things that we do, which can actually get pretty messed up.
Yeah.
The sentient subconscious. The subconscious mind is a sentient agent in its own right that exists alongside our conscious awareness of ourselves. Many tasks our brain do without our conscious awareness are the domain of the subconscious consciousness. These tasks might include organizing memories, processing information and unsolved problems, repressing difficult thoughts, manipulating dreams or hallucinations, and quietly observing the actions of the conscious mind while making choices that are intended to protect and benefit the ego. Further, altered states of consciousness, such as those experienced under psychedelics, allow the subconscious consciousness to directly communicate with the conscious mind, such as during the effect called autonomous voice communication.
This is something that's come up particularly on ayahuasca a lot for me, where I will undergo a psychedelic experience and I will be put in contact with what feels to be a sentient agent that is equally as intelligent as me and can communicate with me, and claims to be my subconscious mind, a system or process or agent in charge of organizing my memories, processing information, categorizing things, silently watching what I'm doing in the background as I go about my life. And I do not know if this is, say, a hallucination of something that claims to be my subconscious mind, or if it's legitimately my subconscious mind, or if there is even a meaningful difference between those two distinctions. But I have had many different experiences with them. The most significant one that comes to mind is an experience I had on ayahuasca, where it was a friend's birthday, so we were going to trip together. However, I couldn't get any of the stuff in me because I had developed a very intense nausea response to the stuff, so I got a crumb of mimosa hostilius root bark into my system. And I thought, oh, okay, well, this is disappointing. I guess I can't trip with you today on your birthday. But what happened was I fully went through an ego dissolution experience, and I broke through and had unbelievably complex psychedelic geometry and hallucinations, and at the time it felt like it defied everything I knew about pharmacology and neurochemistry. And while it was happening, this voice was literally telling me that it was allowing me to trip because it was my friend's birthday, and it would be nice for him if I tripped alongside of him. That honestly completely blew my mind. Terence McKenna also spoke quite a lot about being put in contact with a being or agent, and he interpreted it, I don't know, as like the Gaia mind of the planet or something along those lines. And there has also been a study that concluded that people under the influence of psilocybin, I think about a third of the subjects that they interviewed experienced contact with a voice or an agent, and that experiencing this is actually a positive and therapeutic thing for them. There's also a video by, what's that guy's name?
CGP Grey.
Yeah, there's also a video by CGP Grey about split mind that kind of goes into this exact same idea. I don't know to what extent the subconscious is actually a legitimate sentient agent alongside of that of what we experience as the conscious mind, but I think there is legitimacy to this idea, and it kind of gives me chills when I think about it. So I'm going to rank this as C-.
Just for the spooks?
Yeah.
I definitely find it very plausible. There are things with kind of like a difference between a language aspect of brain and a visual aspect of brain, with them being more governed by the different hemispheres. The one that the subconscious consciousness is presumably on is the one that renders the visuals of dreams and hallucinations.
Yeah. Often it will feel like this agent is manipulating my trip in a certain way to achieve a specific outcome. When it's happened, the agent that does this will explain to me why it is doing that with its thought process.
Okay, here's a thought. Here's a question. When it comes to lucid dreaming, which you have experienced, I have not. If this idea is plausible that the subconscious consciousness kind of creates dreams that the conscious brain experiences, would lucid dreaming be a merging of the conscious and the subconscious, or would it be a collaboration of the conscious and subconscious?
When it comes to dreams, while I think the subconscious consciousness would often manipulate it for a specific outcome, there is also a built-in element of randomness. There will be kind of a statistical emphasis on concepts that have either emotional significance tags or memory recency tags in order to put it in a direction where the simulation that it comes up with goes in a particular direction of, say, a situation that you might want to practice in advance for evolutionary reasons. And sometimes I think the subconscious consciousness will intervene and create dreams for a specific purpose that have specific meaning. But for the most part, dreams are just your brain simulating things on shuffle mode. As for whether or not, like, it becomes a merging,
or a collaboration.
Yeah, I genuinely don't know.
If we're going by the CGP Grey video, then it would be the opposite hemispheres. It is possible for many people to kind of repurpose parts of the brain for things that they weren't originally intended to.
Mm-hmm.
So someone could potentially have some more visual processing on their left hemisphere than someone else, or seems plausible to me. But otherwise, it is just the subconscious part of the brain that is rendering it, even if it's not being deliberately crafted, you know?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So I guess lucid dreaming kind of inherently would be a collaboration to at least some extent.
Or merging, because, you know, the different sides of the brain they do have connections between them.
Yeah. Whether or not that collaboration is deliberate, I'm not entirely sure right now.
Or voluntary.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Universal self-design. As an extension to the concept of non-dualism or unity, I, the universe, created the world for some significant yet ineffable purpose. And my life is as it was intended to be per the universe's plan, down to the tiniest detail, whether good, bad, or horrific.
See, I feel like this one is true to a certain extent, but I really do not like it. At the height of my McKenna syndrome, which I'll go into more later, I felt that as the universe, since I am the entire universe, which is also God, because my definitions of existence and God had merged into one thing, that I had deliberately created and planned my entire life, everyone else's life too, but from my perspective, my life, for a specific purpose. And it was all completely harmonious and perfect. And now, further into my life, when I'm no longer a teenager and I have undergone significant amounts of trauma and grief, I feel like, why would I do that to myself? That seems so silly. There must be some sort of just kind of statistical randomness in how my life occurred. At the height of McKenna syndrome, I can believe that, yes, I am a vessel of subjective effect documentation brought about from the universe to achieve its goals of exponential self-complexification by bringing psychedelics to the masses. But it's so ego and Josie-centric that I think this particular noetic epiphany is unbelievably cringe, and I would actually rank it as F-, the lowest of the low.
You know, if the universe is God, which I see no reason to doubt, this could derive from a combination of the universe is God and hard determinism.
I feel like it contradicts hard determinism.
Well, it's the idea that the universe set things in a way that this exactly would happen. Like, basically, it's whether or not the universe can have any intention.
Do I believe that the universe has conscious intention? Maybe. I feel like this particular noetic epiphany does contradict some of my other noetic epiphanies, and I also just feel emotionally averse to the idea that I designed my life the way that it has gone. Maybe it's for some greater purpose, though, because God works in mysterious ways, etc.
Yeah, it's a very God works in mysterious ways kind of idea.
I don't like that.
If I could have designed my own character sheet, I would have made some adjustments.
Yeah.
Like, let me tell you.
Yeah. So, yeah, F-, lowest of the low. Not a fan.
Synchronicity as a function of exponential self-complexification. Very unlikely synchronicities occur, and not because of magic or a spiritual force communicating with us, but instead as a property hardwired into the universe as part of the universe's natural inclination to exponential self-complexification.
This one is hyper-specific and probably extrapolated from other worldviews that I've gained not through psychedelics, but I strongly feel and believe, not through psychedelics, it's just a conclusion I have come to, that the universe is a system of exponential self-complexification, something that Terence McKenna talked about quite a lot, something that Carl Sagan talked about quite a lot as well through his cosmic calendar. I feel like that's often overlooked by psychonauts. So I just want to mention that. While I do believe that synchronicities, as in very low probable events that feel as if they have some sense of meaning or greater purpose to them, are usually probably coincidences brought about by our primitive monkey pattern-seeking brains, I do think that the universe is set up in such a way that events are aligned to, on a long enough timeline, statistically lean in the direction of it achieving a specific outcome, exponential self-complexification, and it allows for synchronicities to occur if they achieve that greater goal. And I don't necessarily know if this one is real.
I mean, it kind of points to the idea that the universe having intention.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that it has intention, because it might just be pulled in that direction as like a byproduct of some sort of physical processes.
So there could be a force pulling on the universe to become more complex.
From the future, yeah.
Oh.
That we're being pulled towards something, and
yeah.
it doesn't necessarily have to have conscious intention. So, I mean, I like this one, but it's kind of niche and it has super specific applications. So I'm probably just going to rank it as an E+.
Conceptual thought versus linguistic thought. We can process and analyze even complex concepts without using language. There is a structure to languageless thinking that is innate and sophisticated, though impossible to directly communicate to others. We are conditioned to thinking in language because we are a social species, and language is the medium that allows us to communicate with each other.
This is a subjective effect that may not seem very profound in like a metaphysical sense, but it took me so long to verbalize what it was. Within the subjective effect index, it's categorized as conceptual thinking, which exists in contrast to that of linguistic thinking. So human beings, as we grow up with language, have kind of trained themselves to think of everything in words and linguistic sentence structures, but those words on, I guess, a neurological level exist to label or tag the concept itself that is stored in the brain or the memory database. So think you can have a file name, and the name of a file is not the same as the file itself. So when you experience conceptual thinking, you think in raw concepts instead of words. A lot of people already think in raw concepts instead of words, and those kinds of people are probably like, so what? I always think in concepts. Isn't that normal? But no, it's not normal. A huge percentage of the population think primarily in words. I'm primarily thinking words and like, I guess, visual renderings. But thinking in concepts feels different. You're experiencing the raw data of what the concept is instead of the inherently reductive word that only exists to label that concept. And realizing this, for me, has been kind of profound. And I think that the raw concepts that human beings exist in are a sort of universal neurological language. The regular linguistic language that develops through specific cultures exists to kind of label and verbalize.
I think that people think in concepts more than they realize that they do, like you do, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when you have an idea that you're trying to figure out how to say it, like you have the idea, but you're struggling to put it into words.
Yeah.
That kind of implies that you are thinking of it in concepts.
Or when you're thinking of a concept and you can't remember the word.
Yeah, or that. Or you think of a concept and you think there's a word for it, but there isn't.
Yeah, but psychedelics can put you in a state of exclusively conceptual thinking to an extent that feels incredibly raw and vivid and kind of profound.
Yeah, like I think we have an impulse in general, like most people, to find words for things that we're thinking about, just subconsciously, like automatically in the brain.
Well, I certainly do.
This is something that I'm really passionate about. Language is always reductive, but especially when you're going for something that you don't have words for it when you initially experience it, it becomes much more obvious, much more vivid that you're simplifying it. Like you can't encompass the entire concept, the entire feeling in words. Words don't do that. Words never do that. But you're just very conditioned to having these more reductive labels for things in sober reality.
Yeah, this is especially obvious with psychedelics because we will define labels and terms to discuss and describe things which previously we could not discuss and describe with a universal terminology set. And people will be like, but it's not capturing the whole experience. So don't do that. But they seem to fail to realize that language is inherently reductive and doing that for literally anything that they are talking about. Like we need words to describe music, we need words to describe flavor and subjective experience in general. And it's especially important that we have words to discuss and convey the psychedelic experience.
Yeah, I could even compare that to kind of the concept of musicals, where you talk until things are too intense and then you sing. That allows you to encompass more emotion into something than you could if you were just talking. And when things could become too intense even for singing, then it's dancing.
Yeah.
That's kind of like an idea that people put on musicals. There are feelings so intense that they're trying to convey to the audience that words will not do. And that's just normal.
And even the music of dancing is probably still reductive, but it's getting closer to the thing.
I think people can have a bias that people who are better at verbalizing their emotions have stronger or more meaningful emotions, but emotions cannot be fully encompassed in words, and I think that it's very worthwhile to try to figure out how to convey, for example, your love for somebody in words. We know that you can sometimes feel the love more in experience and action than in words. So yeah, this is all very normal.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Conceptual thinking, I think differs in how much of a revelation it is to people, because it depends on how much they think in linguistic versus conceptual thought. But I think it's a very legitimate thing that everyone should be aware of, at least to a certain extent. So I'm going to rank this C+.
For me, this is S tier. S tier.
C+.
So next we have a relatively complicated one. The ego as a cultural filter and context shortcut. To function, we require a sort of cultural filter, and our cultural filters are created by our egos using attitudes learned from others or past experiences as biased mental shortcuts that reduce the need to think in our daily life. It wouldn't be possible to entirely avoid having such a cultural filter, but it can create significant harms. One example of the function of a cultural filter might be perception of music. We can't really listen to music without having associations. Whether we associate music with people we want to associate ourselves with or distance ourselves from, whether it reminds us of what we listened to earlier in life or with specific experiences in our pasts. In the sense of a cultural filter, all of this can influence whether we expect songs, genres, or artists to be worth listening to. There's so much music in the world, and we need some way of recognizing what we're most likely to enjoy before we fully explore it. This process can make our experiences of music more rich, but also make our music consumption less diverse. This kind of thing applies to everything, and isn't just about matters of pure preference. We might look at someone, and based on how they style their hair or what they wear, assume that the person is basic and superficial, or pretentious, or socially awkward, all before they even say a word. If we didn't have these kinds of context shortcuts, it would be far more difficult to navigate the world. We often don't consciously recognize the cultural filter, that's its utility, that we don't have to stop and think about every single thing. That said, the cultural filter can also propagate attitudes and values that we only agree with because we haven't stopped to think about them. Psychedelics can suspend the cultural filter and give us an opportunity to think about things that we normally don't think about at all, which can lead to permanent change in attitude if we commit to new realizations.
This is an idea that was, I think, originally implanted into my head by Terence McKenna through his idea of cultural operating systems, that we are all running a different cultural operating systems on our neurological meat computers that allow us to see the world in different ways. And he would say that this cultural operating system can be reinstalled to something different under the influence of a psychedelic experience. And I certainly agree with that, although I think it's less about reinstalling a different cultural operating system and more about resetting what I refer to as a cultural filter to a baseline level. I have experienced that the ego looks at the world around it and it applies context to concepts that are stored in its memory database in order to avoid having to render the concept in its entirety. For example, if there is a group of people that you might have a stereotype or a bias against, when you think of those people or you encounter those people, instead of rendering the concept in its entirety, you will skip to the context shortcut and perceive it through that filter, whatever cultural filter we happen to have established through our upbringings. However, if you take a psychedelic, it will allow you to see the world without that context giving you a shortcut. It's like being a child. You see the world with fresh eyes and you can come to new conclusions about things that you would not have come to otherwise because you were filtering them. Timothy Leary had a very similar idea that he came to, and he referred to it as a reality tunnel. That we all have this kind of tunnel of reality that differs depending on the person that we filter things through. I think that this idea is very important. Resetting our cultural filters back to a baseline level through the use of psychedelic experiences is an important thing for humanity to do to itself in order to heal and improve. So as a result of that, I'm going to rank this particular noetic epiphany as a C+.
You're ranking all of them low. Do you have any A's?
Maybe, I don't know.
For me, when I experience it, it's feeling stripped down to my own pure essence. That tends to be an aspect of it. I wouldn't say that I feel like a child necessarily, at least not usually. But I do definitely feel like I am my own pure essence. Like I am a flame of spirit in the universe, is the way that it can feel for me. And that's very confidence boosting, because I feel like my pure essence is great. It tends to be what the psychedelics tell me. So that's great. But it also, the things that concern me in the world, the things that shape the way that I see things, all of that is suspended. And as that effect wears off, it feels like my consciousness is getting wrapped in things.
Yeah.
It's wrapping back around me layer by layer.
Okay, so I once had a hallucination of, I saw a concept, and this concept was represented through a white orb, and it was a pure concept, unsullied by my cognitive perception. And then the ego would grow context around this concept, and that was represented by leaves and vines just kind of wrapping around the orb and covering it as a sort of mental shortcut that I can use. And psychedelics will kind of mow the lawn. They'll cut that back down to baseline and it will start to grow back again. But it's good to reset yourself to baseline every now and then.
I really value that experience for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, S tier. For me, S tier.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hardwired spirituality function. The human brain evolved with a built-in spirituality mechanism that motivates people to conceptualize their life within a narrative context that is greater than themselves. A developed, typically pre-packaged spiritual framework can provide individuals with a sense of fulfillment and security, as well as increased social cohesion. These benefits are likely why spirituality evolved as an innate drive of the human psyche.
Under the influence of psychedelic experiences, I have been informed by the psychedelics that human beings have an innate drive, much like hunger or thirst, to fit their life into a bigger picture context that is greater than themselves in order to provide a sense of purpose and direction. Human beings, to varying degrees, all have this drive. Furthermore, psychedelics will activate this drive and cause people to start assembling elaborate bigger picture theories about how their life fits into a broader context of existence or the universe or the world. This particular drive that is present within all humans historically is evolutionary advantageous because it causes people to develop prepackaged spiritual frameworks or ideologies that then become dispensed and put upon social groups and tribes, which increases social cohesion, collaboration, and purpose, and thus has an evolutionary benefit. If you consume enough psychedelics, every person at some point will inevitably undergo this particular drive being activated to an extent which they have likely not experienced before. And when this happens, the person will start assembling incredibly elaborate ideas about how the universe works, about how they fit into the universe, and will be compelled to start informing the people around them about these ideas that they are coming to.
So at this point, you're talking about McKenna syndrome.
Yeah, I refer to this process as McKenna syndrome because McKenna is my childhood hero and I have immense respect for him, but it's pretty clear to me that he had a very intense case of McKenna syndrome. He ingested a lot of psychedelics and he started having some crazy ideas about how the universe around him works, and he started to construct these ideas and inform people about them. You know, the universe is an engine for exponential self-complexification, and through the I Ching theory of divination, we can come up with a formula to track the various stages of increasing novelty in order to predict that, in fact, we will approach the transcendental object at the end of time very soon in the year of December 21st, 2012. And in that moment, we will all transcend and reach a new era of the technological singularity or something along those lines, as well as various other theories. This happens to pretty much everyone that has a number of psychedelic experiences, and it isn't inherently a bad thing. I think it's fundamentally a neutral thing. And depending on how grounded a person is, how rational they're capable of being, how effectively they are capable of hiding their power level, it can be a genuinely good thing that fuels really creative ideas. I have personally undergone McKenna syndrome, and I think that manifested in two different ideas. The first was I need to document the psychedelic experience through establishing a formalized field of phenomenology referred to as subjective effect documentation in order to provide humanity to discuss and describe that which was previously ineffable and holds historical significance and has huge potential for improving humanity and the future of our species, etc., etc. And the other thing was to develop a broader kind of metaphysical context to fit my life into. I could feel that I had a craving, like a desire to come up with a spiritual framework that I could fit my life into to give myself a sense of purpose and meaning. And the way that I did that through my weird, no fun allowed materialist brain was to analyze the pre-existing, pre-packaged spiritual frameworks, i.e. religions that are significant in culture, and to see if they had subcomponents that are universal between them. And then I would identify those subcomponents, which I believe ended up being creation, faith, death, morality, purpose, reverence, and identity. I might be missing one. But if I could identify those components, and instead of providing answers to them through the use of fictional, delusional mythologies, but instead use rationally grounded, evidence-based ideas that are true instead of delusional, I would be able to identify the original religion that is hard-coded into the physical structure of the universe. And this religion would be an open-source framework which people could fork, much like Linux distros, to adjust to their personal belief systems and needs and the needs of their community. And this religion would be called Prototheism.
Wow. First of all, so you're calling Terence McKenna a bit of a kook.
I mean, yeah, he had a pretty serious case of McKenna syndrome.
Fair enough.
I do as well, but
I know. But I'm just saying,
yeah.
Bold choice.
Yeah, if you want to check this religion out, I'm not saying it's legit, but I'm quite passionate about it. You can head over to josiekins.xyz, that's the domain, /prototheism, and just type in the password McKenna syndrome is real. That's all lowercase, no spaces, and you can check it out. Human beings have a drive to come up with a broader context to fit themselves into, and without that, they become devoid of meaning, they become depressed, and life is less worthwhile.
Maybe this is something that's in particular important for, I guess, people who are concerned about materialism versus idealism, because I guess idealists need to perhaps recognize that their idealism could be a process of the human psyche, and materialists should recognize that they can benefit from these experiences and these practices.
Yeah, I think that humanity should be much more self-aware about this need or drive that pretty much all people seem to have to varying degrees. And because of that, I would rank the hardwired spirituality function as A+.
We had Prototheism as an additional insight.
The two kind of merge together because hardwired spirituality function is something that everybody has. Psychedelics can activate that hardwired spirituality function to induce McKenna syndrome. I had McKenna syndrome happen to me. That resulted in me coming up with subjective effect documentation and a weird techno meme religion. I would rank Prototheism as S tier.
The only S tier one is your own McKenna syndrome. Yeah, cute.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We put a lot of thought and time into trying to condense my various noetic epiphanies. Wouldn't have been able to do it without my co-writer, wife, and professional Josie translator, Emily. It would have been impossible. It's incredibly difficult to verbalize these things, and it is really fun to critically analyze the things that you learn from psychedelics. So I would greatly encourage all of you to gain your insights from psychedelics, but don't necessarily assume that they are true, and try and critically analyze them, because there's a lot more utility in them when you do that, instead of just assuming that they are true because the psychedelics told you so.
Yeah, if you guys have had any psychedelic epiphanies like this, do let us know in the comments. I'd be really interested to read.
Genuinely be interested to read them. That's not just like, oh, comment because of the algorithm. I would love to read them, because people have universal insights and they pop up in different subcultures, and it's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, maybe some of them like we could rank in the comments.
Oh yeah, I will.
Yeah,
write down
not all of them. But
write down your noetic epiphanies, and I will rank them.
I would love to rank your epiphanies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
That's the end of the video.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. This video has been a serious labor of love for everyone on the team over the past several months, so thank you so much for watching. The Department of Multidimensional Travel is our new art/merch project with designs by our resident artist and editor Hypnagogist. They're locally screen printed. The camera doesn't really do them justice, and they look genuinely incredible in person. So supporting this initial launch would mean the world to us, and you can look forward to more tourism memorabilia for altered states of consciousness in the future. Another way to support the channel is Patreon, which, depending on the tier that you sign up for, would grant you access to ask me questions, meet with me on video calls to discuss your trips, or just join my Discord server where I hang out and talk with our community on a daily basis. And yeah, thanks so much for 100k subscribers, everyone. It really means a lot to us. We're gearing up for more frequent videos in the future, so please stay tuned for that. And okay, that's about it. Have a good one.